Welcome to another episode of The Ultimate Creative. I am your host, Emily Milling, and today I have with me...
Lianne Kim.
It's my business coach. She is a very cool lady. She's also one of the people that hired me very early on to do her podcast, and that's how we met almost 2 years ago, a year and a half. I don't know what's time anymore, but we have figured out a lot of really cool things in the interim, all about content building, and today I wanted to have you on, Lianne, because you have such an amazing strategic capability for your content marketing. And I think that the people listening to this podcast need to know what you have to say. So before I get into all the big questions, give me the Lianne Kim lowdown. Where did your entrepreneurial journey begin? How did it all start?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that glowing intro. I appreciate that so much. I don't know if I feel like a content genius or whatever it is you called me, but I appreciate it. So I have always had the entrepreneurial bug, and I've always had the coaching bug. I have been trying to give people unsolicited advice for as many years as I can remember. And I think one of my, probably my greatest gift that led me here was I am very strategic. So whenever I see a problem, my mind, without even it's not even intentional, my mind just immediately goes to, how do we take this problem? How do we break it down? How do we make a plan to solve it? And so what I found was, after having kids, I started this group called Mamas & Co., which was called something else then. And it was just local moms who had businesses. At the time, I had a full-time job and a side hustle and 2 kids. And I was just wrapping up maternity leave after my second kid, thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? Because the thought of going back and working for somebody else for the rest of my life was killing me inside. And I found this group of moms who all had either side hustles or their own businesses. And I was so inspired by them. But I found that they all struggled when it came to marketing, selling themselves, basically building a strategy to make money. A lot of them had great ideas. They had tons of passion, but I could see they weren't taking their business as far as they could be. And my background at that point was really in sales and marketing, helping small, medium, and rapidly growing businesses to increase their sales. And so I took the knowledge that I had from that industry and I started just coaching people one-on-one, here and there when I could, because I loved it. And again, I just felt so excited to be in the presence of these entrepreneurs who had taken the leap and left their day job. And it felt so great that I could be giving them sales and marketing strategies that they could go and apply that day to their business. So that's where it really all started. And now, of course, Mamas & Co. has grown and grown. We've been around for over 5 years. We have 200 members inside the community right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah. That number continues to grow over time, and we're growing geographically. We've got members in Australia and New Zealand and the United States, and as well here in Canada. So yeah, I'm really proud of what I've built in a relatively short amount of time, and I'm excited to talk more.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for you to talk more and to build your business more, because everything you do is always there's always really good nuggets of learning for me personally. And I've absorbed a lot from just working with you and being your podcast editor over the last couple of years, which has really certainly helped my business. And then I was like, I got to pay this lady to teach me how to do this stuff. So that's how that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful relationship. I love it. Because, you're so great at what you do, and it's great when we can have that give and take.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a unique setup that we have that I think works really, really well mutually.
Yeah.
So okay, one of the things that when we first started working together, you did a full day VIP session with me and my business partner at the time. And you talked us through the strategic business model that includes free content. So many entrepreneurs are really hesitant to produce free content because they don't really see what the return is on getting somebody into a new client or a new lead if they're just producing a podcast and they're not exactly sure how to track it or whatever that means. So could you talk a little bit about how your free content, before it was a podcast, it was a blog, how has it impacted your business growth, and how has continuing to create free content impacted your content productivity overall?
Okay, so that's a lot of question in a question, but
Yeah.
I'm going to take the first piece and talk a little bit about free content. And I agree. I do think there's a lot of people who are misunderstanding the role of free content in the business. I think a lot of people feel like, well, why bother spending time creating stuff for free because it's not generating revenue right away?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. I was literally just teaching this about an hour ago inside one of my coaching groups. I think we have to remember is one of the best ways for somebody to say, hey, I think I might want to be a client of yours. I think I might want to hire you, is for them to get a taste of what working with us is like. And so in the olden days, I blogged because that's what I assumed all business owners did. And in the very beginning, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to write 52 blogs a year on sales and marketing? Because at that time, that was really my focus, was sales consulting. It shifted really quickly. And what I realized is I'm actually full of all of this content. I'm one of those people that I can create a lot of content and I can do so quickly that I find there are just days where I'm in the zone. So what wasn't working for me actually though with blogging is how slow of a typer I am. And I'm a terrible speller. So I had to hire an editor just to get these things presentable. And then eventually I shifted to, I don't know if you even know this, I shifted to recording voice memos. So I would just open up notes and then just start talking. And I would talk my blogs out because then I could basically write a blog in 5 minutes versus 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I could crank out these blogs. Now they were really messy because of course autocorrect and all that, but I could crank out these blogs really quickly, send them to an editor, get them back, and then I hired someone to do the uploading and all of that. What I found over time is I had built a following of people who consistently waited for that blog every single Thursday, and they were opening it. And so the reasoning behind shifting from blogging to podcasts, there's a lot of reasons. I think the first thing I knew in my heart was I was listening to podcasts and I wasn't reading people's blogs. Like I don't even know who has a blog that I follow or look up to. I just knew that all of a sudden I was listening to one entrepreneurial podcast, then another, and I'd find new people based on who was guest hosting, either, guesting on other people's podcasts. Mm-hmm. So if I, as an entrepreneur who was looking to grow my business, was listening to content, then I knew that other people would be as well. The other thing was I was already basically recording a podcast in like dictating this blog. I was recording, literally recording and speaking verbally. So I realized this is going to be easier for me and faster for me to create a podcast because that's how my brain works. I'm more of a speaker than a writer. Mm-hmm. And then I think the last thing, the thing that really hammered it home was I asked my audience. So in an email one day, I just sent them a single email and I said, I have a question for you. Please listen to this audio file. So I recorded like basically a mini podcast on my shitty old computer and on my shitty mic. And I just spoke to them and I said, hey, I think I'm thinking about starting a podcast. I know you've been a loyal listener, a reader of my blog, and thank you so much. Would you prefer keeping on reading the blog or switching to a podcast? And overwhelming. And they had to listen to it to find out. So that also was an indicator, they're willing to listen to it. Even just by the click rates, I could see who was willing to listen to something versus read a blog. It was my highest responded email. I had dozens and dozens of people reply to that email with their answer. And the answer was overwhelmingly, they all wanted a podcast. So I didn't rely on my gut, even though my gut was very heavily telling me it's a podcast. I really relied on my people. And so I think if your people are saying, I want a blog, go for it. But the truth is, in this day and age, people want to consume information quickly. They want to feel seen and heard. And you can do that more with your voice than you can, plain text, black text on a white screen. You can convey so much more with your voice and inflection and tone, and humor even is easier because I know you're so funny and I'm sure your listeners love how funny you are, but you can convey so much more with your voice than you can with a blog. So that was an easy switch for me. And then so for people who are thinking there's no ROI here, I have to strongly disagree, because by giving that human being a taste of what working with you is like, by just sharing even a little bit of your genius, you're kind of using that as a net. You're casting a nice wide net and you're inviting people to come in, and there's no risk there, right? Because they don't have to even give you their name and email. They don't have to pay you. They just get to consume it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think what happens over time is people consume, 2, 3, 10, 20 episodes. They already know they want to hire you if you're doing your job right in your content. They already know and they love what you're preaching and teaching, and they want more of it. So that's what I anticipated. And that's 100% what we found when we switched to podcasting is I was having shorter sales calls.
Mm-hmm.
I was closing clients faster. They were coming in saying, yeah, I already know I want to hire you. So that was such a great feeling. And so, yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. But then again, if you're looking for a quick fix or overnight success, or if you're looking for the things that always get the results 100% of the time, you probably don't belong in entrepreneurship because it's not how it works.
It's so true. I mean, a lot of people will come to me and truly, like in my earlier days of entrepreneurship, so many questions were really around ROI. And I feel like it's either because I was working more with corporate entities or because they were first-time entrepreneurs and they were really, really careful about where they wanted to spend their money and their time. And time is such a big issue for entrepreneurs, especially new entrepreneurs. We all know this, of course. So I want to kind of get into a little bit more like, how are you productive with your content? Because, like this is the other half of the equation, I think, that a lot of people ask me about. Like, if I'm going to invest time, not necessarily just money, but time into something that's free, like, what am I going to get out of it? How can I be more productive with it? So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you're productive with your content and what that looks like maybe on like a monthly basis or week to week even.
Yeah. So I think as you were speaking, 3 thoughts came to mind about creating the time to create the content, really. I think the first thing is I'm very good at generating ideas, and I believe there's no bad idea. So if an idea comes to me for a podcast, again, like I'll jot it down, I'll whip open my phone and type something down in notes. I might even sketch out an outline because I feel like most of us, there are going to be naturally times where we're inspired and other times where we're just not because we're focused on another element of the business, or maybe we're in, a heavy output season or something like that. So I think when an idea comes to you for content, capture it, get it down. Doesn't mean you have to go and record right now. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make is they're putting podcasting into their schedule willy-nilly. Oh, I'll do one here. And then a couple of days later, I'll do one here. And that brings me to the second thought that I had, which is batching. Mm-hmm. Whether you are blogging, videos, podcasts, whatever it is you create, you're going to be so much more effective if you sit down and batch a hell of a lot of them all at once. So usually in a day, I can get 3 to 5 podcasts recorded if I'm in the zone. And so I will then turn to those ideas and go, okay, great. I've got 6 ideas. These are the 4 that I think I can whip out an outline. So I'm very quick to create those outlines. But when I sit down, there's no other distractions. I never record when the kids are at home if I can avoid it. So I love my kids, and they've been around a lot lately. But it's just, even the background noise is distracting to me, even if you can't hear it on the mic. And it's always something I'm thinking about. So I like to record in an empty house. And then the third piece I was going to share is there are days where I am feeling truly inspired and excited to create, and I'm feeling good in my body, and you can hear it in my voice. And then there are days where I'm just not. So what I don't do is I won't force it. What I will do is I'll look at my schedule and say, where does it fit in for me to record, to batch record? And I'll block that off. But if that moment comes and I have a cold, or I'm exhausted, or I just something else takes priority, I'm not going to force it, because what's going to happen is low quality content. And you're going to hear that, and you're not going to create the engagement or the connection that you want. So I think everyone's got to find the way that works for them when it comes to podcasting. And I believe wholeheartedly in weekly consistent content, if at all possible, because that's how people are going to get to know, like, and trust you. How are they going to get to like you if they hear from you randomly and they're not sure when your next episode is coming out? So by batching these, you know this because you work inside my team. We batch them, we stick them in a folder called original recordings, and they just sit there until we're ready to schedule them into the schedule. A lot of them, they're just kind of universal ideas that when I'm inspired, I'll record them. Others are more time sensitive and they're geared towards a specific promotion. But a lot of them, they'll just get uploaded. And then from there, that's when I reach out to you and sort of say, okay, here's where each of these episodes go. Here's what needs to be done with them. And you're so great at taking it and running with it. But you can record 50 episodes in advance of actually needing them and just let them sit there until you're ready to share it. And most of the time that works. Now, there is the odd occasion where something will happen in society, like COVID-19 is a great example. None of us saw that coming. And when it happened, we were like, we got to create content that's very specific to this right now, because this is a challenge for our people. We have to speak to it. So that's the other 10, 20% of the time where you have to be a little bit agile and ready to record more spontaneously when things come up. You don't have to. I'm sure lots of people didn't respond to that, but it was important to me that we created the time for that. So if you're batching and you're getting stuff done in advance, then you have the time for that when the moment strikes.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't just like one extra episode. You did like a full week of episodes. And that was actually very helpful for me because I was like, I need something else to focus on right now. And I will definitely just go ahead and edit all 5 of these episodes. So, I mean, it's prolific productivity, and you're so great with productivity. Like, I know you help a lot of people with this, and you've got a new mini course out right now, which I got to review and I edited it, but I took a lot of really great nuggets out of there. What do you think is like for an entrepreneur, for a podcast, anyone who's like considering using content marketing to get more leads, what is like a really great takeaway that you think your mini course could give them?
Well, I think probably the number one thing it helps people learn is what are those tasks within our zone of genius that we should absolutely be making time for, and what are the things that need to go. And a lot of us, especially early day entrepreneurs who are maybe not as clear on this, or there's a smaller budget to invest in help, we're doing all the things. And so much of our time is going to shit that doesn't move the needle. It just is. And I would say like we're bogged down by tasks. But on the other hand, I also work with a lot of highly creative individuals like yourself who often get these like inspirations, or as I call them in the course, not opportunities.
Yes.
That sound exciting.
It really resonated with me. Trust me. I was like, okay, Lianne, you're just talking right to me. I get it.
Well, I mean, I'm talking to you, and like 80% of the people I coach are these creative individuals that we just get inspired and we need to act. We feel like the only way to make use of an idea is if we go and act on it right now. But a lot of times those are actually taking us further away from our goals. And so I think the course helps you get clear on what your overarching goals really are, what's meaningful to you and to the journey that you're on and what you want to create in the world. And then it helps you understand what are the things that I should be focusing on, I must be focusing on to get there. And the result of that is we come up with a list of things that we need to then be productive with. And then a whole other list of things that we need to either get rid of, outsource it, stop doing it in some way, delegate it, what have you. I think a lot of people are saying yes to stuff because it feels fun and exciting, but it's really not getting them where they want to be. And that's okay. You can do that. But at the end of the day, if you want to be the person who says, no, I've achieved what I set out to achieve, you're going to have to learn to say no. And you're going to have to really get clear on what are those things in my zone of genius. So for me, the one thing I'll never outsource is the podcast. Like that is, I love doing it. I love recording it. I love even listening back to it. I just said today on Instagram, I was so excited to listen back to today's episode because I was like, oh, this is such good stuff. I think that's what I hope for people. I hope they can get to a place where they love the content they're creating so much because they know it's changing lives and they stand behind it. And then what happens is it leads people to your courses, your membership, your events, your products and services. So
yeah. Well, and then you'll weave in your promos to all of these different things as well. So it's just like this really direct funnel, which I think is the thing that's generally missing, like back to our original point, like when you're creating free content, you really are creating a sales funnel, and it's tough to wrap your head around that at first, and it feels like, oh, there's so much more stuff I should be doing, like I should be reconciling my books, but instead it's like, I know I can't do that. I do know that I can create a lot of content, and I can do it very quickly if I really want to, and definitely like with your mini course, just so helpful, time blocking everything out. I already knew about batch recording things because that is just how I like to do things anyway. It makes life so much easier. And I'm going to be recording like 3 or 4 more episodes after we're done recording here today, but just time blocking in chunks and getting that planner, that dream planner, goal planner, whatever thing it is that you recommended, it's like life changing. And I've got Post-it notes and it's so good. Oh, yeah.
I'm so glad to hear it. Yeah, I think, I will say, I think a lot of us are relying on our memory, and we're relying on our mind to do the time organization for us. But when it's down in black and white, when we can clearly see where we have responsibilities that have been blocked off and where we have that white space, which is the space we get to use on the creative stuff, the fun stuff, the inspiring stuff, it's just so helpful. So you brought up a good point that I want to come back to. When you describe the funnel, I think a lot of people can't see it. So I want to just encourage your listeners to imagine a funnel. So imagine that inverted pyramid shape, if you will, that inverted triangle shape, if you will. The bottom point is your paid products, and only a few people, like you can have a thriving multiple 6 or 7 figure business with just a handful of clients. But in order to do that, you need, further up the funnel, you need more people who are coming into your world, who are experiencing you, who are, booking discovery calls, who are getting like a little bit closer. So we call the podcast a top of funnel strategy because it is one of the ways in which people find me, fall in love with whatever it is they fall in love with, and then eventually come to one of our paid products. And so I want people to think of it like this question: what are the entry points into my business? So you think about whatever it is you sell, people are going to find out about you through some means. And what most people say is it's word of mouth, which I love. Word of mouth referrals, they're such a great, valuable source of leads. However, if we're solely relying on that, we're basically waiting for sales to fall into our lap. So what we want to be thinking strategically is, well, what are the active entry points? Where could someone learn about, for example, Lianne Kim? Well, they could listen to the podcast. They could see me as a guest on someone else's podcast. They could come to a conference, which is actually a big way that people find out about Mamas & Co. is they first see the ads for our conferences. So we know there's really only, I think, about 4 or 5 different entry points into our world. And then once somebody enters, we've kind of got them. Usually we end up getting them on an email list, and they end up investing in us in some way. Now, not everyone's going to have a lifetime customer value of tens of thousands. They're not all going to stick around forever and then move up to group coaching or private coaching. But we know that even a small portion of them will, and that's enough. And so that podcast is such a valuable entry point to us. I can't see there being anything that is as effortless as it is for me, that is as effective as it is, if that makes sense.
So you would say having a podcast has really had a positive impact on your business then?
Oh, 150 million%. I couldn't say enough great things about it. And like I say, they literally tell me in the discovery calls, I feel like you've already been my coach because I've been listening to you for 6, 8, 12 months.
Yeah. And that's how you intro every episode too. I'm your host and business coach, Lianne Kim. I know that because I listen to it every week.
Every episode. Well, and I think your people that are thinking about launching a podcast should think about that. If you were to intro yourself, what do you want the listeners to think of you as? So for me, it's a business coach. If you're a social media strategist, you want to be saying that. You want to be just drilling that into their brains. This is who I am to you, because that's why that's happening. They're coming in thinking you're already my coach, which is such a great feeling, and it makes everything else just fall into place. The other thing I'll say about this that's related, you don't have to be anything else but who you are, because the more you can be on your podcast, you're just attracting the right ones. The wrong ones are going to go, oh, I can't stand that girl. Forget it. I'm not listening to another episode. They're just going to take off, and you don't have to worry about them.
Yeah.
But it's just such a great medium that's so aligned with actually one of my mentors, Rick Mulready. I was just listening to his episode 2 minutes before this call. I was listening to his episode from this week, and he was telling a story about his childhood. And it made me smile because I know him as a person. And I was thinking, he is just so gifted at this. And it just makes me feel like he's so authentically him. He's not trying to be anybody else. And that's what I loved about him. And that's why I hired him as a coach. So it's one of those beautiful things that comes out through podcasting is you will get to know yourself better as well. And you'll get to know what people like about you even more.
It's true. I mean, one of my biggest takeaways so far from having a podcast where I'm the only one in charge of it, like as the host, like, because I've done many podcasts that are like co-hosted or like a live radio play, all of that stuff, but just doing it on your own and like being the voice and the face of the business or the content, whatever it is that you're producing, it's such a confidence boost. Like it really helps you to feel secure in who you are and what you know. And now I know that I know things and I feel 8 billion times better about it. Like my first couple of episodes were so rocky and awful. Like, I don't know if you should go listen to them, frankly, but like they're there if you want to hear what it's like to get over that and like hear the whole journey of that. But, podcasting is such a good shift in confidence, in getting, like you say, like having people know who you are better and feeling more secure in what you know and just being that industry leader and that industry expert.
I was thinking here I will just pop in. I was thinking here of a couple of tips that I have for people because I think people struggle with creating the content. So a couple of thoughts came to mind along that idea of like being authentically you. So one of the things that I do is I have an outline, but I don't have a script. Mm-hmm. So if it can't fit on one 8.5 by 11 page, it's too long. I usually try to think about, 3 to 5 major points to cover. Unless I'm doing like a list episode, like my favorite business books, there's usually 10 of them. Mm-hmm. But I write out that outline. I write it in big, bold letters in it with a Sharpie so that I can record without my glasses, so I can see it. And that outline helps keep me on track. The other thing I do before I record is I think about how long I want this episode to be. So if it's a solo episode, sometimes I want them to be a little bit longer and I'll kind of make note of that and I'm watching the clock as I'm recording. Other times I'm like, no, you know what? I haven't done a short one in a while because you have to remember that people who are listening, they'll start to like different types of episodes. Mm-hmm. And some people only want the short and sweet ones and other people only like the interviews. So another tip that I have, and I would say it's a mistake that I see some people make that are genius content creators and so smart, so amazing in their field, is every one of their episodes is an interview where they're highlighting someone else's success. And I think in the early days, it's hard to do because your confidence isn't quite there, but you have to give your audience a taste of what you know. So resist the temptation. And the formula that we follow, as you know, Emily, in the podcast is every other episode is typically an interview. And out of those interviews, I try to rotate between subject matter experts, so people who are more like my peers or my mentors, and then every other, every handful of episodes, I bring on a coaching client or a student to tell their story. And I'm typically thinking, what's a problem that I know lots of people struggle with that they've had great results with? So like those are some of the tips to make content creation easier. I know a lot of people find interviewing easier. I don't find interviewing easy. I don't actually consider myself a gifted interviewer at all. I feel like as you can probably tell, I'm much better at just rambling senselessly.
But I think you're a great interviewer. I've listened to plenty of your interviews. They all sound great. You keep the conversation going, which I think is probably the most important part of interviewing. So don't even worry about it.
Yeah, I think, on that note, another tip when if you are thinking about for those 50% of the episodes that are going to be interviews, think about people that you just like to have conversations with, where the conversation flows and they have value to add, that your people will, if you love them, your people will probably love them too. That's why like someone like Leah has been on my podcast. Leah Pickard, one of my business besties, has been on my podcast already a couple of times, because I just love her and we could talk for hours. And I think that those are some of the most listened to episodes as well. So it doesn't always have to be someone who knows a specific thing or who's got a specific, like just create conversations with people who you like, and the nuggets of wisdom will naturally come out, and your people will naturally fall in love with those guys too.
Yeah. And I always say, like, when you're getting started with this stuff, just pick people that you really know well. I picked my boyfriend, but like, he happens to be a subject matter expert. So it kind of worked out. It made it a lot easier on me to interview him because I knew that we could stop and start as many times as we needed to. And then just started interviewing friends who are in a similar space that are still speaking to all of the topics and the content that I want to be talking about. But, like, again, it helps to build that confidence level up without it being so high stakes. And like, I took an improv class with this teacher, Ed Sahaley, last year. And it was like the level A. And the one thing that I took away from that class was he kept saying to us, the stakes are so low. You're just in an improv class. Nothing's happening here. You're not going to die. The stakes are so low. And every time I'm like, I start to get a little bit of anxiety happening with anything like this. I'm like, no, the stakes are really low. If I say something dumb to Lianne, I'll just edit it out because I can. And
that's right.
She'll know that I'm just saying something dumb because that was my brain in that moment. The stakes are pretty freaking low. So,
they are. That said, I mean, I'm a big believer of kind of letting it flow, just let it rip, and leave in the mistakes. Like, I think it makes you more endearing to your people. And also it's less work for your podcast editor. If you're curious to how we do things, so I usually record. I'll listen back to it later, not always right after, but sometimes. I'll listen back to it and I'm just sitting there with a notepad and pen, and all I'm doing is making notes of basically where there are glaring mistakes that I need Emily to clean up. And then I send her that because I know it's going to make her job faster if I just send her the edits. And then it's going to make my job faster if I'm listening to it or if someone on the team is listening to the final version. So that's how we do it. But I really, as you know, Emily, I really avoid making a lot of cuts because I think it's the nuances and the little slip ups that make you who you are. Mm-hmm. And if we're trying to overly curate stuff and make it too perfect, it doesn't help us draw the right people to us. Mm-hmm. And it's also way more work for even just for you to mentally think about, let alone the person editing it, which eventually, maybe in most cases, is going to cost you more if you're editing out a bunch of stuff. So my suggestion is let it flow. Know how long you want it to be. And really, the only thing we edit out are like glaring errors, like when I have a coughing attack or if I say the wrong word. Like sometimes I like literally say the wrong word just comes out of my mouth. And I'm like,
one time you like fully made up a word and the note was, take this out. I don't know what it is. I made it up, ? Haha, LOL.
I think it was something like strategizing or something like that. It was
crazy.
It was a totally made up word. And I was like, wait, stop, find the other, what is the correct word? Yeah. In moments like that. But there have been lots of times where I keep going and I just go, whoa, what was that? And I just acknowledge it. And I think that's what stopped people from creating great content and consistent content is they're so focused on the mistakes. You're 100% right. The stakes are low, and it's those mistakes that is what's going to make people fall in love with you and want to know more, because then it gives them permission, especially if you're a business owner speaking to other business owners, it gives them permission to just go out and be themselves and create imperfect content that's going to serve them and it's going to serve their people as well. So it's this beautiful ripple effect that I think can happen if you let it.
For sure. I mean, creating an authentic experience with you makes it so much easier for them to make a decision to work with you. They already know what it's going to be like. So yeah, agreed. Completely agreed. Case closed. We all agree.
I just wanted to, thank you for giving me some space to share those tips, because I know that there's a lot of hangups when it comes to actually getting people's content out the door. And I want to reduce those barriers. I want people to be producing great content and feeling good about it.
It's the perfectionism thing. It's huge. It's a really huge barrier. It's something that I know the podcasters that I work with come up against a lot, that it has to be 1,000,000,000% perfect, but it doesn't have to be. And being more ridiculous is always better, and it's more fun for you in the end. Yeah. So Yeah, forget perfectionism.
Yay.
Let us all recover from that craziness.
Yay. That is one of our values in my business is we bake the fun in from day one. So there's really, coming back to that idea of productivity and what should and shouldn't be on your schedule. If I'm looking at a week ahead and I'm looking at things that feel heavy and draining and not inspiring, I've done something wrong. Like I'm creating a business that I don't want. So I really do encourage my team and my clients to build businesses where they're baking the fun in, and everything that you do as a business owner, and maybe not everything, but maybe 80% of the things that you do are things that you love, that are meaningful, that are helping others, that bring you joy. Because otherwise, why are we doing this if it doesn't bring you joy?
Okay, so I've got one more question for you. If you had to pick just one thing, what is like the biggest, most important content productivity tip that has helped you the most in your entire entrepreneurial journey? But it has to be one. And it can be something that you've already mentioned, but let's just hammer that home for our dear listeners.
Yeah. Oh, what's the one thing? Okay. Well, it would have to be batching. It would have to be, sitting down, getting into the flow, hammering out your multiple episodes in one go. If you're really struggling, I mean, I coach a lot of moms, and a lot of these moms have been homeschooling their kids while trying to run businesses for the last 6 months. Dear God, love them. I don't know how. I don't know how we've done this either. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things on the to-do list. And one of the ways in which we're going to get stuff done is by creating those time blocks, which is why I teach it in the course, in the How to Be Productive course. Because I think if something is meaningful to us, it has to be put on the calendar. But oftentimes it's being put on the calendar in the wrong spot or surrounded by the wrong things, and it doesn't allow us to get into that flow state. What did you think, by the way, in the course when I started talking about that flow piece that I think most people are missing? Did that resonate with you at all?
I think so, but I mean, my brain is like, I have an ADHD, as we all know, because I talk about it endlessly. So like, it's kind of tough for me to get into it. But then there's something called hyperfocus. So that is like this total extreme other side of ADHD, where it's like either you can't focus on one thing at all, or you focus on something so hard that nothing else gets done. And it's incredibly difficult to prioritize, which is why your course was so, so helpful for me. But I think if you are able to get into that flow and have these habits that you're consistently building on, then it's always going to be like, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be hard to get to that point. But if you're able to stick with it and like write things down the way that you explain, you have to write it down, not just type it out on your computer, it's going to make it a lot easier to get into those sort of flow states. So that's where my brain is at with those.
Yeah. I think, you're right. I think flow is hard for a lot of us to get into for a lot of reasons. And then one of the biggest reasons is there's other things vying for our mental attention. And so it's this stuff that I teach is not easy to do. The concepts are easy, but it's not easy to implement. But when you can say, I mean, what I like to, when I coach people on this and they're struggling with getting their content out, and I teach them batching, I'll say, how's it going to feel when you spend a morning on your podcast and you've got episodes for the next month and a half? How's that going to feel? And they go, oh, that's going to feel pretty good. Right? So we just did this with my show because, of course, I was going on a family vacation and I had to get everything to you and the team to make sure we could get it over the finish line. But the byproduct of that was I didn't have to think about the podcast until, another several weeks. Like, we're good up until the end of July. And so I think in that case, like, the benefits of batching far outweigh some of the challenges people face in the beginning. And I think what helps is you go into that batching session, you've blocked it off, you protect the hell out of that time. So, saying no, eliminating the distractions, all the stuff I teach. And then you let go of it needing to be perfect. And you let it flow. And typically when I do this, the first recording is not the best. It's the second, the third, the fourth episode that really I start producing better quality stuff because I've warmed up my mouth and my brain and things are flowing. So batching is one of those things. It's a simple concept, but it's got a ton of benefits. And there's a number of ways you can really make those time blocks more efficient and more effective. So I tried to sneak a few bonus ones in there, even though you asked for just one. I'm sorry, I can't.
We're going to stick with batching. Batching is the one.
She's going to edit batching. Watch. You'll listen to this and all that will be deleted. She'll be like, no. Yeah,
it's just batching. That's all we got. That's all we got time for in this podcast, which is mine, which I can make all the decisions on.
That's right. That's right. You can.
So where can people find this course?
So it is a course designed for mama entrepreneurs, but I'm going to tell you, it is a course that is ideal for anyone who wishes they could get more done with less time. So anyone who's feeling like they want to be producing more, better results, they want to work smarter, not harder, this is for you. Mm-hmm. So it's on mamasandco.ca/productive. The course currently at the moment, it's $37 but it is, I mean, you've done the course. I believe it's worth hundreds of dollars, the content inside.
It kind of is. I was surprised it was $37 and I feel like it should be zillions of dollars more, frankly.
Well, this is to open the kimono a little bit, this is one of our entry points. This is one of the ways in which people are going to find us. And we are going to talk about it on the podcast in a few weeks. Just recorded a fresh episode for you, Emily, yesterday.
Nice. Actually, great.
Yeah. But no, it's a brilliant course. It's already changing lives. I think it helps people get really crystal clear on what they want to create and then some of the ways in which they can do that. And a big part of it, one of the things I'm most proud of is that we teach people how to say no. So I think that's a lot of my women struggle with that, feelings of guilt and needing to put other people's needs first. And so that's saying no is one whole lesson in the mini course. So, if you struggle with any of that, I think there's lots of valuable insight in this course. And I think if you were to sit down and do it, from beginning to end, it would probably take you a couple of hours if you were doing the workbook exercises and everything. But it will, even just those first few hours, you'll gain back, I would say, at least a handful of hours in your first week of applying this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So is there anything else that that you want to share about where people can find you or anything else that's coming up that you'd like to plug, anything like that?
No, I'd love for you to listen. If you like what I'm all about, I'd love for you to listen to my podcast. It's called The Business of Thinking Big. You can find it on Apple Podcast app or Spotify or any of the places you listen to podcasts. Yep. And I'd be ever more grateful if you left a review, because I think that's one of the best ways that it will help more people find great content out there, is to leave a review. So thank you in advance.
Yeah, for sure. I will link to all of these things in the show notes, of course. And thank you so much, Lianne, for being on. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to share this with everybody because what you've given today is obviously so helpful for anyone who's in business of any capacity. Just organize your time, be more productive.
Yes.
Give Lianne your money.
Batch record, get your podcast out there. The world needs to know what you have to offer.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Emily.